at my dad's retirement dinner. The room glittered with chandeliers, crystal glasses, and the low hum of a string quartet. Cameras lined the walls, recording every polite laugh, every congratulatory handshake. I should have felt proud, walking into the Rose Hill Grand Ballroom in Seattle, rain soaking my shoes and chilling my spirit. But I didn't. My dad, Dr. Bennett Vale, stood at the center of it all, tall, composed, perfect in his expensive suit. To the world, he was the pinnacle of achievement, the kind of man everyone wanted to impress. To me, he was the reason my chest burned like someone had branded me a failure. He raised his glass and smiled. The kind of smile that commanded attention and admiration. Only the children who made me proud are truly mine, he said. The room erupted in polite applause, glasses clinking, cameras flashing. I forced a smile, hoping maybe, just maybe, he wouldn't notice me. He noticed me. His gaze cut through the crowd and landed on me, the son who became a teacher, not a lawyer, not a CEO. You can leave, he said. Silence. Forks froze mid-air. Glasses paused mid-toast. My stomach dropped, and I felt every eye on me. The weight of his words wasn't just embarrassment. It was betrayal. Public and sharp. I stood slowly, trying to make my heart stop hammering. But before I could step away, Ara, my wife, brushed my fingers and whispered, "Don't react yet." Her voice was calm, too calm for the storm that had just hit me. She pulled out her phone and typed something quickly. A screen flashed. "Ready." Whoever she was texting replied instantly. I followed her gaze as my father continued his speech, the words flowing smoothly for everyone else, but like a knife for me. And then I saw it, the VIP table. My seat wasn't there, not near the cameras, not near the stage, not anywhere close to where he wanted his successful children to sit. Instead, my name was assigned to table 19, tucked behind a marble pillar at the far end of the ballroom. Wilted flowers, cheaper linens, and a faint perfume scent that didn't belong. I swallowed hard, jaw tight, and walked with Ara to the table. Behind us, laughter and champagne clinks echoed, a cruel reminder of the life I wasn't allowed to share in. From the corner of my eye, I watched Sloane, my stepmother Clarice's daughter, glide toward the stage, smiling like she owned the night. Clarice followed her every move, shaking hands with donors as though she had been born for this role. I felt invisible, and yet Ara's calm grip reminded me there was more happening here than I could see. Something was coming, I didn't know what, but I trusted her. My father may have humiliated me, but I had someone by my side who already knew the truth. The night had just begun. Table 19 was a world apart from the glittering stage. The linens were dull, the flowers half wilted, and the air smelled faintly of overused perfume. My father didn't glance my way. Not once. Not even the polite acknowledgement I had secretly hoped for. I sank into my chair, trying to disappear into the background. Around me, other educators, teachers, mentors, administrators nodded politely, but their smiles didn't reach their eyes. I could feel their awareness of my exile, the subtle judgment that came with sitting out of place. Ara leaned close. Her hand rested on mine, a silent anchor. "Remember," she whispered. "Don't react yet." I nodded, though my stomach churned. The humiliation was thick in the air, almost tangible. Every flashbulb from the cameras reminded me I was not invisible. But the world was looking at me as if I were nothing. From the corner of my eye, I watched Sloane at the VIP table. My stepmother Clarice's daughter, perfect posture, perfect smile, laughing at a joke I couldn't hear. Clarice stood behind her, a gleaming image of social dominance, moving through the crowd with practiced grace. She didn't need to humiliate me directly. The seating arrangement, the attention, the hierarchy, everything spoke louder than words. The string quartet played a soft melody, but to me, it sounded like a mocking soundtrack underscoring every moment of my invisibility. I clenched my fists under the table, trying to focus, trying to breathe, trying not to let the fire of anger and shame spill over. Her phone glimmered again. A quick flash, a message sent, a reply received. She didn't look at me, just typed, smiled faintly, and whispered, "Now," before I could ask. My father took the stage. The room held its collective breath as he raised his glass, the familiar commanding smile on his face. Cameras went off like gunfire. He began his speech, recounting accomplishments, praising successes, but each word landed on me like salt in an open wound. I caught a subtle, Movement from Ara. She tapped something on her phone and gave me a barely perceptible nod. My pulse quickened. Whatever she had planned, it was time. The shame of the last 10 minutes had been heavy. The laughter, the polite claps, the visual contrast between Table 19 and the VIP table. Everything screamed that I had been relegated, erased, and dismissed. But Ara's calm, deliberate presence reminded me that this night was far from over. Something was about to happen, something that would make everyone, including my father, look at me differently, and I was ready to witness it. Before I continue, tell from which place are you watching this story right now? Please subscribe and like the video for motivation. The night dragged on. Every toast and every applause another reminder that I didn't belong here. From Table 19, I could see the VIP table shining under the chandelier light like a gilded stage. Sloane leaned forward to laugh at a joke my father had made, her teeth sparkling under the camera flashes. My father's hand rested casually on Clarice's back. The picture of pride, and not for me. Every so often, someone from my table offered polite smiles, but their eyes betrayed the same thought. Why isn't he with the successful children? I felt invisible, irrelevant, like a footnote in my own father's celebration. My hands rested on the table, fingers drumming lightly, trying to keep my composure. I thought of the years I'd spent teaching, of the lives I'd touched, the students I'd inspired, but none of that mattered here. None of that counted. Ara sat beside me, calm as ever. Her eyes scanned the room, not missing a single detail. Every nod, every whisper, every lingering look from a camera crew. It all registered in her mind. She leaned closer, her voice a quiet thread of control in the chaos. Watch, she said. I didn't understand yet, but I trusted her. As my father continued his speech, I noticed something curious. A few of the donors and sponsors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A couple of them exchanged quick glances, subtly frowning. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but to Ara, it was enough. She typed rapidly on her phone, fingers moving like a conductor orchestrating a symphony. I couldn't hear. Sloane laughed again, louder this time, tilting her head to catch my father's gaze. He smiled, indulgent, completely unaware that the world around him was starting to notice cracks in his perfect image. Ara's phone flashed again. She glanced at me, eyes steady. It's time, her look said. I swallowed hard, heart hammering. My humiliation had been absolute. Every inch of the room a reminder that I had failed according to my father's rigid definition. And yet, the air shifted, subtle, almost invisible, but I felt it, a change in the atmosphere. Something was coming that would break the spell of perfection my father had cast over this night. The flashbulbs continued to pop. My father spoke, unaware of the moment. Approaching that would turn attention away from him, and finally, toward the truth. I sat straighter, alert, heart racing. For the first time since I arrived, I felt a glimmer of anticipation beneath the shame. Ara was in control now, and whatever was about to happen, I would not be the one humiliated. Again, the string quartet softened their music as my father's speech reached its peak, the applause rolling in waves. Sloane's laugh rang out again, echoing across the ballroom. Every flash from the cameras reminded me of my place, or rather, my non-place. I could feel the weight of every eye in the room, the unspoken judgment of the crowd, and yet, through all the embarrassment, Ara's hand remained steady on mine. She hadn't flinched once. Her calm was a tether in the storm of my humiliation. Paul, she whispered, leaning close so only I could hear. Watch closely. Not everyone here believes him. I followed her gaze. A few of the donors exchanged subtle glances. A couple of superintendents shifted uncomfortably in their chairs, and a camera crew hesitated for just a fraction of a second. Small, almost invisible cracks, but enough for Ara. She tapped her phone lightly, and a soft chime confirmed her message had been sent. I didn't know what she had planned, only that something was about to change. The air felt different, electric, charged with anticipation. I swallowed hard, heart hammering in my chest. My father, completely unaware, continued his speech, praising success, legacy, and achievement as if none of it applied to me. The room, for all its glittering grandeur, suddenly felt fragile. Every polite laugh and clap now carried an edge of tension I hadn't noticed before. I realized that the people around us were watching, not just my father, but the night itself. Something was shifting. Then Ara stood, calm, composed, and commanding attention without even trying. She didn't raise her voice, but the room quieted as if the chandeliers themselves had hushed. My father's smile faltered slightly. Cameras pivoted, reporters murmured. "Excuse me," Ara began, her voice clear and steady, carrying across the ballroom. "I think it's time everyone knows the truth." I felt my chest tighten. This was it, the moment. The room leaned in, almost collectively holding its breath. My father's posture stiffened, his confident composure starting to crack. Sloane's laugh died in her throat. Clarice's perfectly polished smile wavered. I watched Ara. Standing tall, eyes locking briefly with mine, she had orchestrated this entire moment. And I realized then, the humiliation my father had so carefully planned was about to turn completely on. Him, the ballroom, once filled with sparkling perfection, now seemed like a stage waiting for the curtain to drop. Every eye was on Ara, and indirectly, on me. I swallowed, trying to steady my racing heart. After everything, the judgment, the exile to table 19, the whispered reminders of my failure, I felt something unexpected. Hope, because finally, the world was about to see my father as he really was. Ara's voice had barely finished cutting through the murmurs of the ballroom when I realized every eye had shifted toward her and, by extension, toward me. The whispers rippled like a wave. My father's perfectly polished image began to falter under the weight of the attention he hadn't anticipated. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ara continued, voice calm yet resolute, "you've all heard tonight about legacy, success, and children who have made their parents proud." She paused, letting her words hang in the air. The hush that followed was palpable. Cameras pivoted, reporters adjusted their lenses, and even the string quartet seemed to pause mid-note. Could feel my pulse thundering in my ears. My father's eyes narrowed slightly, his composure tightening like a taut rope. Sloane's laugh had completely vanished, and Clarice's smile wavered into a forced grimace. Ara held up her phone and tapped the screen. A few seconds later, a series of images and messages flashed on the big screens behind the stage. Photos of my father in meetings, shaking hands, smiling, but also texts, emails, and private recordings that revealed his true nature. Manipulative, controlling, dismissive of the very educators and students he claimed to value. The room went still. Gasps echoed across the hall. Some of the donors' eyes widened. Others looked down, shaking their heads in disbelief. My father opened his mouth, perhaps to intervene, but Ara held up a hand. "Please," she said softly but firmly. "Let the truth speak for itself." Felt my chest loosen as the tension that had weighed on me for months, years, even began to lift. For the first time tonight I could breathe. The humiliation, the seating at table 19, the invisible dagger of my father's judgment. It all began to dissolve in the face of this revelation. "You see," Ara continued, "Paul may not fit the mold of a lawyer, a CEO, or whatever standard Dr. Vale has set, but he has something far greater. He shapes minds, inspires young hearts, and makes a difference every single day. The truth is, his legacy is real. Yours? Well, that will now be judged by everyone here." My father's face went pale. Sloane's eyes darted nervously. Clarice's composure cracked. The flashbulbs of cameras clicked repeatedly, capturing the shock and disbelief on their faces. I could barely believe it myself. After everything, the rejection, the whispers, the judgment, I finally felt seen. Not for what my father demanded, but for who I truly am. A few seconds stretched like minutes. Then one by one, people began to clap. It started quietly, a few polite taps, but quickly swelled into a genuine, heartfelt applause. Some of the donors and superintendents gave nods of respect. Even a few colleagues from the teaching world who had been present stood and cheered. Ara looked at me, a small smile playing on her lips. "You did nothing wrong. Paul, you've always been enough." I swallowed hard, emotion choking my voice. My father tried to respond, but the words faltered, empty. Powerless against the truth Ara had unveiled. Sloane shifted in her seat, and I realized she was no longer the shining star of the evening. The spotlight had shifted completely, illuminating my place, not at the table, but in the room. In the hearts of everyone witnessing this moment, for the first time all night, I smiled genuinely. My wife had orchestrated this, yes, but this was my vindication. My years of work, my quiet achievements, my life as a teacher, It all mattered. I wasn't the failure my father wanted to brand me as. I was Paul, and that was enough. The applause continued, filling the ballroom with a sound that felt like freedom. And as I stood there, hands trembling slightly, I realized something powerful. The chains my father had tried to place on me, expectations, judgment, shame, had been broken, not by confrontation but by truth, courage, and love. The room that had humiliated me hours ago now celebrated me in its own way. My father could say whatever he wanted, present whatever image he wished, but the truth, Era had shown it, and it had changed everything. I reached for her hand. Her grip was steady, reassuring, and I finally allowed myself to relax. No longer invisible, no longer the failure at the far end of the ballroom. I was Paul, seen, respected, and finally vindicated. And in that moment, I realized something I'd always known deep down. Real success isn't measured by approval, by tables, by applause from the wrong people. It's measured by the impact you make, the lives you touch, and the courage to stand in your truth. Tonight, in front of everyone, I finally did. The applause had faded, but the atmosphere in the Rose Hill Grand Ballroom remained charged. Conversations whispered around us like a gentle storm, full of speculation and awe. I felt a strange mix of relief and exhilaration coursing through me, like I had been carrying a mountain on my back, and it had finally crumbled. Ara squeezed my hand, grounding me. "It's done, Paul, they all know." I nodded, still catching my breath. My father stood frozen near the stage, his carefully cultivated image cracked. Every smile he had worn so meticulously all evening now seemed hollow. Sloane shifted uncomfortably, her confidence shaken. Even Clarice, the queen of charm and control, could not mask the sharp tension in her jaw and the flicker of worry in her eyes. I looked around and saw subtle changes in the room. A few donors who had previously avoided eye contact now gave me nods of respect. Some of my colleagues from the education world, who had quietly watched my humiliation, now smiled genuinely, a glimmer of pride in their eyes. For once I felt included, not because of prestige, not because of wealth, but because of who I was. My father finally cleared his throat, attempting to regain control, but the words faltered. Every sentence he spoke now sounded forced, empty, and reactive. He tried to praise Sloane, but the effort fell flat. The room had already shifted its allegiance, its attention, and its admiration. Ara leaned closer again, whispering, "You handled it perfectly. Just be yourself, always." Realized then that her intervention had not just exposed my father, it had given me permission to stand fully in my own life, to claim the space I had been denied for so long. My identity, my achievements, my choices, they mattered. The humiliation, while sharp in public, had become a catalyst for something far more powerful. Validation from truth itself. Sloane avoided my gaze, and for the first time I noticed a subtle tension in her movements. She had been groomed to shine, to take the spotlight, but it no longer belonged solely to her. Clarice's calculated charm had lost its edge. The hierarchy that had been so rigidly enforced was shifting. Quietly but undeniably, I took a deep breath, allowing myself to finally feel pride. Not the pride my father demanded, not the hollow pride of wealth or title, but a deeper pride, knowing I had lived my life with integrity, that I had remained true to myself, and that tonight, the world had finally recognized it. Ara smiled at me, her eyes glinting with satisfaction and quiet triumph. "Your father might never understand, but that doesn't matter. You do, and everyone who counts will too." I looked back at my father one last time, noting the lines of shock, discomfort, and perhaps for the first time, a hint of respect, or at least recognition. The golden image he had spent decades perfecting had fractured, and the truth was now undeniable. As the night wound down, people began leaving, conversations buzzing with newfound perspectives. I felt lighter with each step, no longer burdened by shame or expectation. For the first time in years, I was free, not just from my father's judgment, but from the weight of needing his approval. And through it all, Ara stayed beside me, a quiet pillar of strength. I realized that her intervention hadn't just saved me from humiliation. It had given me something far greater. The courage to claim my life, my worth, and my identity on my own terms. The ballroom, once a stage for my father's power, had become a testament to truth, resilience, and love, and I knew in that moment that nothing would ever feel the same again. The Rose Hill Grand. Ballroom had emptied, leaving behind a soft echo of music, the faint clink of glasses being cleared, and the lingering warmth of chandeliers dimming one by one. The night that had begun as the most humiliating in my life had transformed into something I never imagined. Clarity, vindication, and, strangely, peace. Era stayed beside me as we walked toward the exit. Her hand rested over mine, grounding me, reminding me that I had survived not just my father's cruelty, but the weight of years of doubt and expectation. "You did it," she whispered. "Not because of me, but because you are who you are," I swallowed, overwhelmed. The fire of embarrassment that had burned in me for months was gone, replaced by something steadier, pride in my own life, my choices, my truth. For the first time, I realized that being Paul, the teacher, the husband, the man who quietly made a difference, was enough. More than enough. As we stepped into the rainy streets of Seattle, the city lights blurred through the falling rain, casting a shimmering glow over the wet pavement. I thought about my father, Dr. Bennett Vale, still in the ballroom, facing the aftermath of Ara's reveal. I felt a strange mix of emotions, lingering hurt, yes, but also relief. His approval was no longer my burden to carry. His judgment, once a shadow over every achievement, had finally lost its power. Sloane and Clarice had vanished from my immediate view, retreating with their own shaken pride. The careful social hierarchy that had sought to erase me from the spotlight had collapsed under the weight of truth. And I, quiet, unassuming, underestimated, had emerged intact, respected, and undeniably present. Ara squeezed my hand again. "You know," she said, a small, playful smile crossing her face, "some people will never forgive the truth. But that's their problem. Not yours." I laughed softly, the sound lighter than it had been in years. She was right. The people who mattered, the students whose lives I touched, the colleagues who saw my integrity, the friends who knew my heart, had witnessed the truth. And in the end, that was all that mattered. I paused at the corner of the street, watching the neon reflections dance on the puddles, and thought back to the moment my father had humiliated me. That sharp, branded pain had felt unbearable at the time. But now it was part of the story, a necessary prelude to everything that had followed. Without that darkness, I might never have seen the light. Finally, I spoke aloud, more to myself than anyone else. "I am Paul. I am enough. I always have been." Ara squeezed my hand in quiet agreement, and I felt a warmth spread through me that had nothing to do with the rain or the city lights. It was a fire that came from within, steady and unwavering. The days that followed were quieter but no less meaningful. Messages of support arrived from unexpected corners. Colleagues, former students, even distant friends who had caught wind of the night's events. Each note was a reminder that truth, when finally seen, has a resonance far beyond the stage, far beyond the ballroom, far beyond the confines of fear or expectation. And as for my father, I realized that his control, his need for perfection, and his judgment would always be part of who he was. I could not change him, nor did I need to. I had changed in ways he could neither diminish nor deny. And in that I found freedom. That night, standing in the soft glow of the streetlights, rain washing over my shoulders, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, peace. Not the hollow peace of forced acceptance, but the deep, unshakable peace of living in truth, in love, and in the knowledge that I, Paul, had finally claimed my life. The lesson of the night was clear. Approval can be denied, humiliation can strike, and injustice can linger, but integrity, courage, and the love of those who truly see you are unbreakable. And for the first time, I understood that real victory isn't measured by applause, tables, or public image. It's measured by the quiet, steadfast knowledge that you are enough, that you are seen, that you are free. I squeezed Ara's hand once more, letting the rain wash away every trace of the past. Together we walked forward, not toward my father's approval, not toward societal accolades, but toward life as it had always been meant to be. Ours, authentic and undeniable, and in that moment, I finally smiled without restraint. Because Paul, the real Paul, had won.